from my house to yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. Today I'm joined by Joel Scutchfield, who leads Koh Young in the Americas. Joel, always a pleasure to talk to you. We spoke this time last year, and you were pretty newly promoted to your position. So your first full year in charge. It's been a bit of a banner year, 20th anniversary, 20,000 machines. Quite an impressive year for the EMS industry generally, but we kind of go into 23 as you mentioned with some guarded enthusiasm. How are you feeling at the end of that first year in charge yourself, but also after such a good year, but with some kind of nervousness in the market?
Sure, it has absolutely been a phenomenal year, Phil, and I would like to give all the credit in the world to our team because they are the ones that have made that happen. We've certainly been well positioned from a customer perspective, and having the kind of customers that are deeply immersed in, let's just say, what's very hot right now. And that has certainly provided us with the opportunity for a record year. But at the end of the day, it's the team. It's all the great people that we have here pulling on the same end of the rope that have helped to bring that to fruition. It's one thing to have the potential; it's a far another to actually achieve. But I'm very thankful to them, and very thankful for a phenomenal first year. So as you said, where do we go from here, right? I think, yes, it's always in the Koh Young world traditional at this time of year to talk about growth for the coming year. And once again, we're doing that. We're really not here in the Americas anyway, overly concerned about some of the things that we're hearing about. And that's primarily, Phil, due to conversations that we're having with our customers on a fairly regular basis. It's one thing to read the news clippings, et cetera, if you will, which are a mixed bag. And I think for everyone that says we're going to be just fine here in the Americas, there are probably two that maybe disagree with that. But again, I like to think, as we've talked in the past, and I think a lot of my brethren here in the industry are starting to agree that we're in a good spot in this electronics manufacturing sector. And starting with the fact that we're building product, many of us. Supplying equipment to customers that are building product, that are items that are being funded, which helps, right? Things like EV and green, solar, advanced packaging, et cetera, but also really focused on infrastructure type products in general. Whereas in some of the other parts of the world, things like consumer, et cetera, that are traditionally affected more by a recession or any type of a downturn, that situation is much more prominent. So by virtue of the fact that, again, especially with our large EMS customers, we're focused on those sectors that are growing, infrastructure based, again, 5G, cloud, mil-aero, et cetera, all these initiatives that have pretty good funding for the near future and are part and parcel to the future of our world, if you will. So we feel pretty good about that. That doesn't say that we're immune completely, but it feels like we're in a better space. Most of the people I'm talking to have backlogs, have full bookings for 2023. The issue is parts, which we can also talk about a little bit. That's up and down as well, but they're likewise fairly optimistic. So I think we're going to go with that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense too as well. I think it's always interesting. We look at what we see in the media in terms of general economic trends, and it's easy to get caught up in that. But what we've seen this year is just such a growth in so many sectors in terms of more and more electronics appearing in the automotive sector with EVs, more and more in medical, more and more in infrastructure, more cloud, so much going on with the rollout of 5G and everything else that it feels like that's a bit of a buffer for the electronics industry as a whole, which is great. And then when we look at EMS, particularly in the Americas, we're seeing a bit of a regional shift with whether it's reshoring, friendshoring, ally shoring, all these different terms we're starting to hear more of now. That's also an opportunity for growth in the Americas. So there's some strong counter signals that should ease any kind of downturn we see. One of the things I really appreciated in your response to the What's the Scoop 2023 trends was the comment you were getting about reshoring plans potentially being, if you like, blown off course a little bit by the inability to get talent. And that seems to be something we're hearing more and more about. Even in Mexico, where we thought, there were plenty of people. People are growing so fast down there, particularly in towns like Guadalajara, that it is hard to get the talent. And we are seeing wage inflation. How big a concern for the EMSs you talk to is talent?
Yeah, it really, as you alluded to, Phil, it really hits to the specific space that you're trying to penetrate. I guess when it comes to finding people, there's a couple of areas where we're thin right now. One is on the production floor, certainly, and that applies to U.S., Canada, Mexico, and in terms of the Americas. And I think that's the same situation that we're seeing globally. So that's obviously a bit of a concern, especially when it takes people to start new plants, and when we talk about reshoring, nearshoring, et cetera, it does make it a little bit different. Some of these larger EMS folks in particular have to think twice. In fact, I've been told very directly that we have to ensure either, number one, that we can get people to run a potential plant that we would build in the U.S. in particular, and or Mexico, but also to counteract that a bit and the concern that might not be possible near term, we need to look at more automation. And I think that's just basically a known fact for manufacturing, certainly in America, in Canada, for the Americas, in higher labor content areas, parts of Europe as well, that we're just going to have to automate more. And certainly, the printed circuit board assembly process is already highly automated on the front end, but now we're looking at automation on the back end. And I think that's the next big wave that we're going to be asked to attack, and those are areas that we're looking at today. Yeah. The other side of that is the engineering force, right? Having the engineering talent, bringing young people into this industry. One of the sidebars of the CHIPS Act is that these folks that are going to be receiving the money for the advanced packaging initiatives in particular need to be tied into one of the major universities locally to ensure that they're going to be able to produce engineers and other types of talent to be able to run those facilities. So I've been having lots of conversations recently with both folks on the academia side as well as the plant side, if you will, the advanced packaging manufacturers, and trying to gain a little more insight into that. But one thing is clear: they're definitely linked, and I think that may slow the process just a little bit. But it's not stopping people from moving full speed ahead. I think what I'm referring to there is bringing that completely to fruition is going to take a little bit more time. But we're moving fast in that direction.
Yeah, I think the link you make to automation is is really interesting as a way to mitigate that talent shortage. But before we dig into that, I would say that, one of the things that we're seeing EMS companies do around the world is looking at the way they present their brand, not just to their customers, but to prospective employees, and and how they can be the company to work for. And you mentioned earlier how proud you are of your team. Koh Young's one of those companies, manufacturing companies or equipment companies in the industry, that people not just like your equipment, they like you as a company, and you're a company that they want to work for. And I think that's a underestimated value in a business. You really need to have that culture of team, and that culture, your guys work exceptionally hard, but they have fun. There's a real camaraderie within the Koh Young team. And I think that makes recruitment just that little bit easier.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think we're seeing a shift, the whole, the ESG initiative, if you will, social, environmental. We're putting a premium on people. And I think this is something that's, being talked about at high levels in CEO offices worldwide right now, as we look collectively for ways to overcome this. But this new crop of folks coming in is a little bit different. We kind of call them the social generation, right? The social media certainly generation, and their needs, their desires, their wants are different than when people like myself were coming into this industry 30 some odd years ago, and even folks since, much more interested in that whole work-life balance, communication, accepting of their feedback and input. So I think companies like ourselves and really all others within the industry would be very prudent to really heed that fact, if you will. I mean, that's really the situation that we're working with. And we can be old curmudgeons and say we're not going to play that way, but we have no choice. When there's more of them than there are of us, then we have to change.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think working for a company that reflects your ideals in terms of ESG, and you talk about the social generation, it is social media, but it's that social awareness as well. It's that desire to work for a company that cares about the planet, has a diverse workforce, is accessible to everybody, has products that have a positive impact.
Exactly. And so many moving parts.
And when you look at the electronics industry, there is so much to offer there. There's so much we can do in terms of improving the ESG side of how the business operates. But actually, most of those products in sustainable energy and stuff, contain electronics. So there's a really interesting impact there. The other thing that you talk about quite specifically is the potential uptick in digital transformation, and how maybe the post SMT side of that is the most important side of it. Do you see that as something that is quite high on the priority list for your EMS customers in 2023?
I think it continues to grow, Phil, and I think we now kind of move into phase two. Everybody now seems to have had the chance to get their hands on tools that provide the data real time, but now it's how do we help them do more with it quickly? How do we take that next step in terms of the connectivity that allows for self-healing, real communication that is beyond just showing results, but now providing information that can be automatically applied. So it's not a human that has to take that information and go do something with it. But again, I think it ties directly back to what we just talked about in terms of the labor shortage. Yeah. I had a customer in for a demo here just within the last month or so that he really didn't even want to talk about the equipment. He was confident that the equipment can do what it needs to do, or what he needs it to do. He wanted to talk about the digitalization. He wanted to talk about the software, and knowing full well that he's not going to have the liberty, the ability to, oversee everything real time on his own. He needs a dashboard. He needs to be able to, from a single location, know exactly what's going on his plant floor at any point in time across multiple lines. And I think that's really what everything's driving toward now at this point with regards to the whole smart factory initiative. We've prided ourselves on making our equipment, making our software as intuitive as it can be, as human less needy as it can be, just from the perspective of ease of use, again, intuitiveness, auto programming, auto as much as you can, using AI, et cetera, et cetera. So that just continues to go next level, I think, going forward now, Phil, and especially with these EMS companies who have had a taste and have seen results, but their challenges are a little bit different in terms of applying on a mass scale. And I think that's the next step. It's we've been successful, with small
projects,
bites, right? So now let's really broaden this thing. Let's take it, full scale, not only across a specific site, but multiple sites across the entire company.
Yeah. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity. And as you say, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we can get the best data, but now we're thinking about how can we get the best insight? How can we make the best decisions with that? And how can we automate as much of that process as possible and make it as transparent as possible? And I think that's where 2023 is likely to take us and where the opportunities lie. And when I look at what you're doing, and I think it's fascinating what you were saying about the customer talking to you about the software and taking the hardware as a bit of a given, shows two things. One, that you've done a great job because people just know your hardware is going to work. But two, that people are moving to that point where they see you as that holistic, innovative company that specializes in inspection, and that'll help when we move into that post SMT area and there are different inspection requirements. You've got pin insertion, you've got all those different kind of things. Where do you see that in terms of product roadmap, and perhaps specifically if there's anything new that we should expect at Apex 2023, which will be the first time the industry is together in the new year?
Yeah, we're very excited about that, and looking forward to what we hope is going to be a very traditional pre-COVID Apex, let's say, right, where people are out in masses, especially given the pent-up demand, right? It's been a couple of years since a lot of these people were able to really get out to a show like this. So there's certainly the ongoing push year in and year out for us to just continue to push the envelope with our software. And again, kind of as you alluded to, that's the separating factor now at this point, right? That's the piece that will, continue to separate those of us in this space as we go forward. So naturally, we want to be able to put our best foot forward any opportunity that we have. And Apex will give the opportunity for us to do that on a couple of fronts. First and foremost, with our new GUI software that we've developed that's really designed to really streamline the entire package, if you will, across all platforms. We realized that to go forward faster, we needed to respin the structure, the internal software structure. And by doing so, now we can apply that to all of the various systems up and down the line. We can apply changes requested by customers, modifications, customization much quicker. We can do it on a local level using our own MES talent rather than having to go back to the factory. So this is something that obviously we're very excited about. We'll be giving a short preview of that. It's something that in all likelihood won't be released until the latter part of next year, but we have enough to be able to whet appetites, and it's really very impressive. In addition to that, we're obviously always moving forward with the KPO tools, Koh Young Process Optimizer. So now the final phase of KPO printer, which is that full control of the printer for speed, pressure, and release based on the results provided by the diagnostic tool. Through the use also of artificial intelligence to be able to now fully control that that print process. And then, of course, now moving on to the mounter, where we're providing feedback to the mounter for anomalies with regards to feeder, spindle, nozzle, and even positional XY, that whole self-healing. So again, we want to make sure that that's front and center as well. And then, and of course, the last major piece will be and of course, that ties into the whole pre-reflow initiative that we've talked about, Phil, in the past. And we have very significant plans to expand that in 2023. But the last piece is the dispense process, the Neptune. And we've certainly learned a lot in the last year after really officially introducing it at Apex last year in a show context, if you will. A lot of real world applications at multiple customers, very challenging applications in high volume environments, which drive certainly new capabilities, stabilization, respinning, improving, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been able to really package together all of that of which we've learned during that time. And now we want to show that. We want to basically show where we've been able to take that and the capabilities that exist today. So again, and the more software centric, certainly, but
still doing what you do on the hardware, which is the important thing. And I think the more places you are in the line with the hardware, the more value that software can deliver, because you have a much more holistic data. I would encourage anybody that's interested in that pre-reflow AOI to look at the Eric Miskell show that you did with Patrick from Matrix. That was a fascinating discussion and a really interesting advocate for that. I'll put a link in the video notes for that. But I think that was a really interesting one. So
you're living it for sure.
Yeah. So when I look at it, I think the opportunities are there. In 2023, I think, I expect Apex to have a decent bounce. I was at Electronica a few weeks ago, and I think there were 70,000 people, which seems like a pre-pandemic number. So
that's healthy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's something to look forward to.
It'll be a good gauge for us also, Phil. I mean, our plan is to, stay the course through Apex and use that as an opportunity to, again, further gauge, what our customers are saying. What are you seeing now that we're a few weeks into 2023? I know it's going to be early, but, what's changed since we were together back in November in Minneapolis and talking about, what's going to happen in 2023? Has there been any change in your business plan? Has there been any pullback? Are you staying the course? So, our plan, even as a company, is to basically reassess after Apex and then make our adjustments and modifications to any plans and strategies that we may need to based on that information. So I think it's going to be very valuable on a couple of fronts. And I think is an opportunity for not only us, but the industry in total to kind of,
get together and
see where we're at, which way's the wind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned staying the course, and I think that's something that Koh Young has always done. When I look back at previous downturns, particularly the global financial crisis, I know Dr. Koh saw that as an opportunity just to crank up R&D and produce more product. And that is such a smart thing. Well, it proved to be such a smart thing to do at that time. So
it did. That basically birthed our AOI tool at the end of the day, right?
And that continuation to invest in R&D is something that I think is really important at this time, because whilst people, perhaps are having a bit of a softening in demand, particularly in certain sectors, as you mentioned, consumer, they're still going to be looking hard at how they can spend that time and what they can do in that time to improve their performance as a business. So it's a good opportunity for them to make adjustments in terms of their digital transformation. So yeah, I think an exciting year ahead. Absolutely. Joel.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
That's good. Pleasure to chat to you. Look forward to seeing you in person at Apex. But in the meantime, thanks so much for your time. And we'll talk again soon.
You're very welcome, Phil.